Freedom of speech and the press are two of the backbones of American freedom. Those on the left who would declare an all-out war on those rights know they can't legally censor speech. So they've devised a way to discriminate and censor conservative voices and media outlets like this one, like Newsmax, through other means. Now, the Federal Trade Commission could put that discrimination on steroids by approving a mega merger to create the largest advertising agency in the world. But Americans are pushing back. The Independent Media Council, Newsmax, and the CPAC Foundation Center for Regulatory Freedom have filed opposition to the FTC's merger between Omnicom Group and IPG. Both companies used biased rating systems like NewsGuard and the Global Disinformation Index, which is tied to George Soros, when advising clients about their advertising expenditures. Joining me now to discuss the dangers here and the effort to stop it, Director of the Foundation Center for Regulatory Freedom, Andrew Langer. Andrew, thank you very much for being here. Talk to us about why this merger is so potentially dangerous to free speech in this country.
Well, Tom, let's take a step back here and let's talk about, the left's attempts over the years to sidestep the Constitution's protections, whether it's free speech or the right to keep and bear arms, et cetera, et cetera. While I have a basic precept, that which the Constitution prohibits outright, entities can't sidestep to enact their ideological goals otherwise. And we've seen this happen before. During the Obama administration, Congress did a great report on this. Republicans in Congress did a great report on this thing called Operation Chokepoint, where the Obama administration knew they couldn't go after guns and ammunition manufacturers and dealers, so they they created this thing called Operation Chokepoint, which, among other things, was designed to pressure banks and credit card payment processors into shutting down the accounts of these entities, thus starving them of their resources. And one of the great fears that we have here is that with the weaponization of this kind of tech, entities like Newsmax or CPAC or whatever can have revenues stifled, the lifeblood stifled. And so we want the FTC to look very closely at this.
All right, so how are organizations like NewsGuard and the Global Disinformation Index really weapons designed to suppress those voices and to justify what you were just talking about? Talk to us about that.
Right. So what happens is that NewsGuard and this Global Disinformation Center, what they've done is they've put their thumb on the scale in terms of entities and organizations that they think ought to be funded down the road and ought to be supported down the road, and those that ought to be suppressed and silenced. And so it's akin to what we've talked about with regards to places like Meta and formerly at X, what we used to call Twitter, in terms of the idea of shadow banning, right? We're not going to outright go out and ban these platforms. What we're going to do is we're going to put our thumb on the scale. So when it comes to NewsGuard, right, they make these recommendations about entities that ought to be allowed to advertise or have advertising revenues go to. And so what happens is that if you're on this list, these entities, the media buyers, they will go on and say, well, you know something, maybe you shouldn't go and direct your media buys to this entity, direct them over there. So at the end of the day, it starves these entities of the revenues that they need to succeed, and we think that's fundamentally unfair.
And it's also an abdication of, from on the part of the ad agencies, an abdication of their fiduciary responsibility to their own clients. So they choke off the revenue from these organizations. But that means that this attempt to control information, and this is the thing that I think is really so dangerous.
Yeah.
The effort to control the information and the speech then also has to kind of run through the corporations and the agencies as well, wouldn't it?
Right. You know, it's funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was in the ad buying world a couple months back, and she had been horrified at the way that this kind of perspective has infected these agencies. Her job, as she understood it for many, many years, was to make sure that her clients' messages were being spread as far and wide as possible, and even to unique and interesting audiences that may not have wanted to hear these messages or hear from these advertisers before. And she was amazed when both colleagues at her level and also those coming up in the world were saying, no, 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 we don't want to expose our clients to these kinds of audiences. That's not the kinds of audiences that our clients should have.
That's
As we all know, that's not the way this is supposed
yeah.
to work.
So the news outlets who have really been the mouthpieces of the left for years, they're losing
Yeah.
audience. So they've had to resort to these tactics in order to try to drive revenue and drive viewership. How can Americans watching this push back? And is the Trump administration doing enough on this to try to prevent this merger from happening and to try to prevent these tactics from being advanced?
Well, I think the Trump administration is doing a great many wonderful things. Obviously, there's always more to do. You know, one of the things that the Biden administration had done was implemented essentially a whole of government approach to implementing their ideological agenda, you know, using it in all
Right.
kinds of new and innovative ways. So, for instance, like in their attacks on religious freedom, using the National Park Service to remove the statue of William Penn from the William Penn's homestead. Nobody would have thought that, you know, that it would have gone to this level. And so it's taking a lot of time to peel back. What is wonderful right now is that various agencies, from the FTC to the FCC to others, have opened up their rulemaking processes. Anybody can file comments. I urge everybody, listen, this is one of the things we do at the Center for Regulatory Freedom. Go and check out, as part of your daily information dump, go and check out regulations.gov. It is the portal where you, as an average, everyday American citizen, can go and have your voice heard with these agencies, whether it's the FTC or the FCC. There's a whole new rulemaking on media consolidation where comments are coming closed on Monday at the FCC. But, you know, when the other agencies are doing great things, you need to send your notes in, your comments into these agencies to let them know how you feel.
And also the states need to get involved. The federal government needs to stop spending money with these agencies. No taxpayer money should go to an ad agency that uses NewsGuard or GDI or any of these biased rating systems or as part of this cabal. All right, we're going to continue to follow this, but I've got to wrap. Andrew Langer, thank you so much for joining us, explaining all of this, and keep us updated, okay?
Thank you, Tom. You have a great Saturday.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.